Hi, I'm Dr. Mike.
And I'm Nick.
And this is NFGeeks. Nick, once again, thank you very much for being on NFGeeks, as usual.
Anytime.
Yeah. So this video, this is something I've been beating this dead horse forever, but I want to talk about it again because I want to get this message out there. And it's basically about the function fetish that goes on online about the functions. And I really don't think this is a good thing. It causes more harm than good.
Yeah.
You know, I started professionally dealing with MBTI about really 10 years ago because I was teaching it in a career seminar course, you know, using it for career stuff and, you know, going to the career center and they take the MBTI and explain them the things. You know, that's kind of stuff that always happens. And I taught intro to psychology, where, you know, I had a whole lecture about personality theory and, you know, I had a whole thing about the Myers-Briggs and all that, you know. But in all that sort of training, this emphasis on the functions didn't come up, okay? I mean, it was there, you know, NE and but it wasn't like the main thing. The main thing was, here's what your type is. Are you an intuitive or a sensor? You know, very basic. And then what was your type and how does your type work? And it wasn't until NFGeeks that I really came into the function fetish, because, you know, I'd be making these videos talking about these goofy things, whatever, and I would get comment after comment, why aren't you talking about the functions? You got to talk about the functions. And I was like, well, why? Why do I have to talk about this? And then I encountered the community, the online community, and the function fetish of everybody talking about just the very, very specific things about NI, and, you know, I'm an introverted intuitive, and then going crazy on that. And I think that this has done more harm than good. The reductionism down to like talking about one direction of one function and then trying to figure everything out of that one thing. I think that's been a mistake in that everybody is all confused about their type, and I think it has to do with this, because they need to be more holistic, and really they need to be more simpler in it. You know what I mean? If I just figure out someone's an intuitive and a thinker, that's it. Who knows whether they're, I'm already halfway there. You know, I don't need to know whether they're an extroverted thinker. If I got them down to NT and they're introverted, now I got them down to 2, you know, it's much easier to type that way. So my first question actually to you then is how, and again, you may not know, but how did this all start? And, you know, what is the culture of this? Where does this all come from like this? Because it's not part of my own professional experience. I mean, it is now.
I think where it started to get really prevalent was the onset of the online community. So the online typology community is what probably really spread it like wildfire. Where I think it originates from, I think what happens is a couple things. It starts probably with the individual being dissatisfied with either what type they've scored as, or confusion meaning if you scored as an ENFP, which you did, with all clear preferences, did you?
Oh yeah, of course.
Okay. There's no confusion for you at that point. You're clearly an E, you're clearly an N, you're clearly an F, you're clearly a P. Why would you want to investigate any further? You wouldn't want to. So what I think is that either people are not satisfied with the types that they got on the MBTI, / don't identify with that type, and they're like, what the heck's going on? Which leads them to dig further, or again, they don't have clear preferences. Like I said, I have clear intuitive preferences, clear feeling preferences with my J and P. That caused why I dug into the functions more is because I was saying to myself, I'm not clear into one other thing. But then I was like, oh, I learned about this function thing. And INFP has all these functions, and INFJ has all these functions. They're completely different.
Right, that's
And then you
that's
dig in
true,
more and relate
but
to
I
one
don't
or
think.
the other.
See, I think you're being too nice
Okay.
to everybody, because I don't even think it has to do with the
Well,
MBTI.
Mike, I'm an NF, so that's kind
Very
of what
true.
I'm wired to do.
Well, me too, but I'm gonna wag my finger.
Oh, I know. You're an
That-
authority on the matter.
That's right.
Yeah.
So I'm going to wag my finger on this. And the reason is I don't even think it starts with the MBTI. I think people are reading about the functions and then they are introjecting them, which means they're just memorizing them. They're not really kind of internalizing what's going on with them and what these things mean. And it's totally reductionary. And also, I think it's too abstract. I mean, anyone can argue. Let's say you know nothing about this,
Sure.
and you've never taken the MBTI. Anybody can argue that they're an introverted intuitive.
Oh,
and rationalize that.
I've
and
thought
get
of this
there.
before.
You know
Yep,
what I mean?
yep,
Everyone
yep.
can get there, and that's what everyone does. Actually, whatever it is, it doesn't even have to be introverted. It could be anything.
True, okay,
But I
there-
mean, I think people are using the functions as in a way to sort of create their identity, and I think that's the mistake. I think the mistake is that people have mistaken identity and type to be things. And so I don't want to be this type because I don't want to be this identity, or I want to have this identity and I want to justify it in whatever way I can think of through a specific function. And that's a terrible mistake.
You're right. I think if what you're saying is that introducing yourself to the functions before anything else, meaning
Yes.
before the inventory, before you even learn about, what differentiates the dichotomies, and if you're starting with the functions and you're saying to yourself, okay, here you go, here's 8 functions, which one do I identify with the most? That could lead to questions of which one do I like the most?
Right.
Which one do I wish I was the most?
Yeah, and-
which one do I really think I'm the most?
And that's
so on and
because
so forth.
that people are not having a direct experience of that. I mean, once you have the frame and then you kind of reflect backwards, you can see if you're an NF and an extroverted intuitive.
Yeah.
But if you don't know any of that, how do you know? How can you assess yourself as being an extroverted intuitive? I mean, for example, when I'm being intuitive, I'm on the inside. You know what I mean? I'm putting things together on inside. Well,
Technically,
doesn't that mean I'm
everything's
I'm an introverted, intuitor? I'm having thoughts. Doesn't that mean I'm a thinker? So you're not having a direct experience of the functions. You're having this external experience, and then you're not even taking them in. You're just sort of reading them. Say, it's like function buffet.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah,
I want
yeah,
this
yeah,
one.
yeah.
I want that one.
True,
and
true.
a
Yep.
lot of pot stickers. Those are good, but I don't want the, pot stickers.
True.
Really good.
I do feel like people, it's not so much that they necessarily start just with the functions. They start learning about this thing called Myers-Briggs. And then they learn about, there's these 16 types. Which one do I seem like the most? And I got a feeling with a lot of people, just the dichotomies I, E, N, S, T, F, P, J, that's not enough for some people. And I almost feel like they want to dig in a little bit more. And once they start digging in, you have to be completely, even if you're a freaking feeler, this is the time to be completely stone cold objective if you can, and just say, this is what I really am. But we do still agree on the fact that if you take the MBTI, it is still intrinsically designed to sort all that stuff out.
Sure.
I mean, the functions should come after,
The-
post MBTI
right, the
taking.
specific part, but the thing that kills me is that you don't need to know any of the functions like that in order to type anybody.
I agree.
Honestly, I
Yeah.
type people all the time. I professionally do it. I never think about any or anything. I think, okay, are they introverted, are they extroverted, intuitive, and you get there. I mean, you get there and you get it right. I mean, I don't miss the mark a lot here, and that's because I'm not going into this crazy kind of, are they an introverted feel? I never do that. I can just think, are they really thinking or feeling? Much more simpler. And I also think if to get types, you need to memorize. See, nobody wants to do this. You have to memorize the type descriptions. You know what I mean? Like, you really have to have the type descriptions down, and not just in terms of the words, but being able to apply it to people. Mm-hmm. And then you can avoid this whole thing and get it right.
Yeah, I do feel like you have to have a good sense of archetypes. Having like, an INFP is this, an ENTP is this.
Or at least knowing the boundaries.
Yeah, yeah, I do think that it's absolutely disgusting when people try to type other people. Say if they're trying to type a celebrity or an actual someone they actually know, or what we see a lot on the discussion groups in the forums is, people trying to type other people in the forum. You're not this, so you're like this. And usually what they're starting with is either the physical body cues, like this is what an eye looks like. This is what, you are doing this. And, there's some truth to that, I think, but it's not what comes first, because behavior is totally different from preference.
And this is what I mean too, that how can you have an internalized idea of this? You're not having any experience of this. I mean, you see a comment that's 3 sentences. I mean, how can you tell if it's introverted, extroverted, intuition or whatever, like just from the sentence? Granted, there's a process thing going on, but still, being able to make that decision based on 3 sentences is kind of, it's kind of hard, to make that jump.
It's nearly impossible. Yeah.
Right. And also the celebrity thing, I like doing that, but it has to be for fun. Like, you just kind of having fun with it.
No, you're right.
But
even something like that, it's like, yeah, what I feel like we probably see this similarly is that if you are like trying to say guess someone's type, not telling them what you guess, but just being like, oh, that person's that. That's part of what typology is about, is understanding someone else, and part of that is having the ability to just try to figure out someone's type so you can interact with them or whatever in a more productive way. And yeah, I think the first thing you should start is general. You should start general and holistically. Say like,
yeah, absolutely.
Does this person look like? Usually, where I start with this is I'll come in contact with a person, and the archetype will come first. It'll be like, that person's an ESTJ, and then I'll start to break it down even more. Then, are they an SJ? Are they an SP? Are they an F? And I start to eliminate temperaments. Once I get a temperament, then I really start to, and I'm still kind of confused. That's when I'll kind of like go to the functions as like kind of like a last resort. All right, I can't tell if they're these 2 types. This is what I've seen extroverted feeling to look like, or extroverted thinking. Then I'll start to try to fine tune. But the functions, it's still a.
But do I really even need to do that? I mean, can I just go to, are they a thinker or a feeler? You know what I mean?
I think if the preference is strong.
And that seems a lot easier and a lot more specific. Or really even like, I don't know why people don't, because this is where I start off. Figure out whether somebody's an NF or an SJ or whatever, because those are much more broader strokes.
Sure.
You know what I mean? It's a lot easier to see a much broader stroke like that. Like, is this paint stroke going across, or is it going, vertically? That's a lot simpler. It's a lot simpler to discover an NF or an SP than it is to figure out if somebody is an internal, an introverted feeler.
I think people they're overanalyzing it and overthinking it, and they're trying to make sure that they didn't miss a little nuance. Say if they're
all right, but I think that's because of identity. I don't think it's because they're really trying to find their type. I think they're trying to find what their identity is. They've made this mistake that type and identity are the same thing. And if I don't like my type, this is an identity, that I want, or you can construct type the way you construct identity. They've mixed up the 2 things. All right, we only have a minute left, so I want to comment something that's been in my head, and that is that, well, what can we do? You're talking about the online community. Well, the whole online community is poisoned. There's no turning back. I mean, it's a sea of functions.
Yeah,
there's certainly an ocean, if you will.
Yeah.
Any thoughts at what we can do about that? If anything?
I mean, you can tell people.
Or what are your feelings about it?
My feeling is what your feeling is too, which is, start with the freaking MBTI. If you're confused after that, like you don't identify with the description or whatever, something's not jiving with you, maybe take it again and this time be more stone cold honest with who you are, what your true preferences are. If you're still confused and it's like a slight preference, maybe go into the functions to see if you identify with one more. But I think the real thing is not so much the MBTI. I think the practitioner really has to do a good job of being able to answer
Questions.
any questions
Yes.
that
And
the taker may have.
Yes. And I think also just to, to end this is to not think, to separate out type and identity. You can construct your identity.
No, you're
That's
right, yeah,
constructible. Your type, not so much, but these two things are not the same thing, and that's not such a bad thing. All right, Nick, thank you once again for coming on NFGeeks, and this is a very
You're
fascinating
welcome.
topic.
Thank you, yeah.
All right, Noah, take us out.